Many have tried, but few have succeeded. Welcome to WatchMojo.com, and today we're counting down our picks for the top 10 hardest Sega Genesis games. For this list, we'll be looking at video games for the classic console that ranged from pretty hard to nigh impossible to complete due to gaming mechanics, design choices, or even a few glitches. Number 10, Aladdin. Turns out Aladdin's journey from street rat to prince was a lot harder than we thought. While this title was met with critical acclaim, it's certainly no cakewalk. Enemies can dish out a fair bit of damage, especially with their frequent ranged attacks, and while the jumping mechanic can often mean the difference between life and death, the hazardous obstacles such as lava pits and falling rocks can easily catch the player off guard. It definitely requires practice or an abundance of beginner's luck, and the less that is said about the Cave of Wonders stage, the better. Number 9, Shadow of the Beast. Its style was considered almost revolutionary due to its high-quality soundtrack and detailed parallax scrolling backdrops, the likes of which hadn't been seen in most action video games. Of course, you didn't really have the time to admire the colorful scenery due to the massive enemies and death traps coming at you non-stop. Due to a technical error when porting the game to the Sega Genesis, the frame rate runs 16% faster than the original, and due to the fact that there are no continues available, this increases the difficulty exponentially. You'll need precise timing and a good idea of where each threat is coming from if you ever want to beat this beast of a game. Number 8, RoboCop versus the Terminator. These two cybernetic juggernauts go head-to-head in a sci-fi fan's dream, though the final product didn't quite live up to the thrill of the original 4-issue comic that it was based upon. Taking on the role of RoboCop, players have to shoot and jump their way through a whole cityscape while being hunted by an endless series of Terminators. The difficulty stems from the latter suddenly appearing on screen without a moment's notice, so unless your marksman skills are up to scratch, you'll find yourself layered with lead before you know it. The fact that RoboCop is also on the sluggish side doesn't help either. Number 7, Castlevania Bloodlines. Though it takes out many of the essential ingredients that make up a classic Castlevania game, such as the decision to depart from Dracula's castle and not having the Vampire King as the main antagonist, Bloodlines is still regarded as an overlooked gem. The abundance of special effects and the use of terrifying sub-bosses certainly upped the ante, even concealing the true ending of the game to those who weren't brave enough to take on Expert Mode. Despite its rather short length, there's enough difficulty in its mind-bending stages and monstrous boss fights to give even the most seasoned vampire hunter a hard time. Number 6, Sonic the Hedgehog. The start of one of video games' greatest franchises wasn't without its fair share of challenges. Sonic's intense speed by itself is enough to quickly overwhelm any unfamiliar audiences, and considering this entry was its inception, that was probably just about everyone. With Robotnik's minions just waiting to launch spike traps and bleed you dry of rings, not to mention that annoying as hell underwater labyrinth zone, this was by no means a simple platformer. Absent of any assistance from Tails, power-ups like the Aqua Shield or techniques like the Spin Dash ironically make Sonic's debut a rather prickly one. Number 5, Ecco the Dolphin. When the developer goes out of their way to make their game purposefully challenging to this extent, you might just find yourself gaining a hatred for them and dolphins alike. Following the adventures of the titular Echo, players must navigate across oceans and across time in order to save the world from an alien takeover. What makes this game so tough can be summed up in 2 words: air gauge. If Echo doesn't come up for air on a regular basis, then you won't find yourself very far from a game over screen. The most infamous challenge within this game is the level Welcome to the Machine, an auto-scrolling stage that can easily crush you if you don't have the route memorized. Number 4, Battletoads. This group of mutated amphibians were made infamous among the gaming community due to the racing segments of their debut title. While the Sega Genesis port has toned down the difficulty just a tad to make it more accessible, it's hardly more than just a facelift. While the biker sections are slower in speed, and there is an increase in the amount of starting lives at the beginning of the level, there is still an absence of any continue mechanic, as well as the irritating ability to accidentally do harm to the other Battletoads when you're playing with someone else. It may be beloved by fans, but there's still no denying that it remains unbalanced and brutal. Number 3, Comics Zone. It may be set within the pages of a comic book, but the harsh reality of this game made it painfully clear. You and Sketch are not going to have an easy time. As players fight their way through comic panels withstanding waves of enemies and solving various puzzles, they have the option to punch through breakable objects and tear off parts of the panel to use as projectiles. However, these greatly diminish health. When you're being attacked on all sides in such a small environment, and even your weapons cause you damage, that quickly stacks the odds against you. Number 2, Ghouls and Ghosts. In order to save the soul of his beloved Princess Prin, King Arthur will valiantly take on the undead legions of Lucifer. Unfortunately, he comes equipped with the worst set of armor ever forged, as it all breaks apart after a single hit, leaving Arthur with nothing but his unmentionables and the player left running around the trap-filled dungeons. The armor can be recovered via treasure chests, but there's always a chance that could be a booby trap, sending a half-naked Arthur to his grave. The lack of defense ensures that despite being able to fight back, players will be doing a lot of running away if they want to make it to the next level. Before we reveal our number 1 pick, here are a few honorable mentions. Number 1, Contra Hardcore. The clue is in the title. While the original Contra was undoubtedly filled with challenges of the manliest proportions, it pales in comparison to the apocalyptic intensity of this 4th entry in the franchise. To put it in perspective, the Japanese port had to tone down the difficulty. In fact, even Konami found it too challenging. With a limited number of continues combined with the fact that the game doesn't believe in slowing down even for a second, only players with ninja reflexes will be able to blast their way to victory through crazy boss battles and more projectiles than they'll have ever seen before. Do you agree with our list? Which Sega Genesis game do you think is the hardest? With new top 10s published every day, be sure to subscribe to WatchMojo.com.
Ha 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 ha.